technology really doesn't slow down. And while I was told tales of flying cars of the future when I was a young girl, it seems far more likely that we will remain grounded, but maybe that we won't be the ones driving the cars. Instead, they'll be driving themselves. Is that the future of EVs? And that's why I've invited Chris, aka at DirtyTesla on X and YouTube, to join me today to talk on the Out of Spec podcast. So welcome. Thank you for coming on this evening. I hope you're doing well. You said it was snowing over there?
Yep, it's snowing. Thank you for having me in Michigan. And so, yeah, it's doing good over here.
Good. Yeah, winter is really coming in. I was on a nice fall walk today. There's still leaves, colored leaves on the trees, but it's definitely getting colder and colder, which I don't really mind, honestly.
Not my favorite, but it's all right.
Yeah. Now that I'm not in Colorado anymore, they're getting snow already. And I'm like, that's okay.
Yeah,
I'll try something different this year. But yeah, thanks for coming on. We met each other a few months ago, actually, when I was first coming onto the Out of Spec team. You came out to Colorado and we took, Kyle's Model 3 out to
Model S.
Model S. Okay, thank you. To try out the FSD, I don't remember which version, but on I-70, in the mountain corridors, that specific spot where it really puts it to the test because, it's pretty windy. There's an incline, and we navigated all the way from the parking lot out into the interstate and back. So,
right.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. What version of FSD was that?
It was 11.4 something, I believe. Yeah, okay. Somewhere around there. We haven't had a whole ton of updates lately, so it was in the 11s somewhere.
Okay, cool. And, I really wanted to get your opinion on FSD. I haven't covered it much on the podcast at all. I know generally, what it does, but, you've been following it closely from what I know. You live with it, in your Tesla, which is what model do you have?
So we own two Model Ys that both right now have FSD, kind of, yeah.
Pretty kind of. What do you mean by that?
With the free full self-driving transfer, I had it on my car, and then we bought my wife a Model Y, and we transferred it to hers because I'm planning on trading mine for Cybertruck. So in the meantime, while I'm waiting, I'm addicted to it. I don't want to live without it, so I'm subscribing to it. I can use referral credits, so I get 3 months at a time of FSD. So both cars have it, but my car is subscribing to it. Her car has it full time.
Oh, that's interesting. So I bet you're getting excited with the Cybertruck deliveries apparently coming quite soon.
Oh, yeah. No, it's just a few days now.
Super cool. Yeah. So you've been paying attention to this technology, living with it, like you said. And so you have an idea of how it's also advanced throughout its timeline. And I think the fact that you've not only been, that you say you're addicted to it, which I'd love to figure out what you love about it so much, but also you've been observing it and watching it change, because this has, of course, been a thing that has been iterated upon. It has to get better and better. It's quote unquote learning. So you have an idea of the challenges and the successes that have been in the former, current, and future goals of making FSD really happen for Tesla vehicles. So FSD, just in case anyone isn't super sure about it, I'd love to give them a bit of an outline of what it does. So FSD, it stands for the full self-driving ability, right? And when it comes to Tesla and how it exists today, I'd love for you to let me know if I'm missing anything. But what I understand about it, and what I hope you'll add some color to, of course, is that it's a package. You can purchase it, you can move it between Teslas, but you do have to buy this beta form of it, and then just as an everyday driver. And it includes this set of features that are designed to enhance the vehicle's capabilities and then move it towards this autonomous driving. So it can navigate on autopilot, it auto lane changes, it parks itself, auto park. You can summon it so it can come to you, stop at traffic lights and stop signs. Are there other features that I should mention? And also, you're laughing, and I guess that's could be because that's the goal of what it should do, but it doesn't always do it.
Well, Tesla is in a weird spot right now in that they keep changing their hardware. So the first thing I want to clarify is you can't really move it in between cars. Tesla had a one-time for quarter three of 2023 promotion to kind of get people to upgrade their cars, where they were like, you know what, if you get a new car, we'll let you move your FSD one time. We're never going to do it again. I don't believe them. I think maybe they'll do it one more time. So it's not normally something you can move in between cars, but we did take advantage of that one time. We basically got lucky with our order. Cool. On top of that, the other thing I'm kind of chuckling at is you talk about the auto park and all of that. And on older cars with FSD, yes, it will auto park, but Tesla removed the ultrasonic sensors from their newer cars.
Right.
And vehicles without ultrasonic sensors, even if you buy FSD, you pay 12 grand, is not going to auto park. You can't summon, you can't smart summon. And it's been over a year. Tesla's been promising, yes, we're bringing it to these, vision only cars, they call them, and it's still not here. So it's a frustrating point for me that I point out to owners. So my 2021 Model Y, it can summon, smart summon, auto park, no problem. My wife's 2023 Model Y, it can't do those three things, even though it's a newer car and has the same software.
It seems counterintuitive if you're going to continue to make this thing, to improve it, to create a better offering, but it can't do what what former models can do, previous models from earlier model years can do, but also that seems like something that I'd want, if anything, of all the things that it can do, I would want it to be able to do. So they took off these sensors, which until I guess they're prepped, you're saying, with just the, using the eyesight, they're not going to add back on?
They're telling us it's coming eventually. That's really all we know. Teslas get software updates all the time. And, I believe them that eventually, yes, it's going to have those features. But I just, we're going off topic a little bit, but I get a little frustrated that they leave these things on the website. If you go to buy a Tesla, it'll say, it does summon, smart summon. They'll give you a little warning before you take delivery, but just, it doesn't do it right now. So take it off the website. Add it back later when it's actually ready.
I think that's a good point. I think Tesla, just in general, the communication from them can sometimes be vague, but that also sounds like not like a wholly true offering, right? If they're saying you can buy it and it actually doesn't perform that yet right now, then
it's coming.
Exactly. It's always on its way, right? So I'd love to kind of go back in time through the history of FSD to its, origination. So roughly, when did it come out? When was it started? And what were the original goals that you remember?
Sure. So originally before FSD, there was autopilot, which is just like lane keep and speed keep. And then we got navigate on autopilot, which was in about March of 2019 or so. And that allowed the car to automatically make its own lane changes on the highway and do take exits and do interchanges and things. And then we got to FSD beta, which came out October of 2020. And that's when it first started, just to literally employees had it, but outside of the employees, just a couple of people worldwide. And then a few more people got it. There was a very small group of about 1,000 people, most of those being employees. So I joined in November of 2020 is when I started. So it's been, 3 years of doing this stuff. And that was it for a while. Only those people. And at the time, it was kind of like, Tesla would literally give you a phone call and they would say, hey, do you want to join this? Just so you know, this can do the wrong thing at the worst time. You have to pay full attention. This is like, you're helping us out here. You got to agree. So of course, I'm like, heck yeah, I want to do this. So you get in the car, and the goal has always been an autonomous vehicle that can drive itself from A to B with no help from the human. Legally, and because the system wasn't capable, you have to have a person in the driver's seat. And it's still like that today. It was like that in the beginning. The difference between, a very general kind of description between the beginning and today is the beginning was really awful. I have videos, on YouTube from the first day that I got it, and the car would, veer off to the left out of nowhere. It tried to drive through the middle of a roundabout. It just, couldn't really drive that well. Whereas today, it still can make mistakes. You still need to pay attention, but it's not that uncommon for me to go A to B on, a short 5-mile drive or even a 20-mile drive, and I do nothing. I just sit there and watch the car. So it has improved tremendously in that time. There's still a really long way to go in terms of I'm going to go to sleep. The car's going to drop me off somewhere. I'm still skeptical of it, even though I am impressed by what the car can do.
Right. So it kind of started out with these basic features, and then the whole full self-driving capability that obviously takes on a lot more responsibility than just keeping in the lanes and keeping the speed, which is very helpful. But if you're able to just sit there and not do anything, which I do think would make me nervous a little bit.
Yeah, that's fair.
But yeah, you've had experience in it. So have there been major steps in its progress from this origination that you've seen that it was like, oh my God, it was so great when they did this, or they tried this and it failed and then they tried this?
Yeah, actually, that's a great way to put it. That's happened many times. So in the beginning, as I said, it would make really big mistakes, and you'd have to take over very often. And even some of the basic things. So before FSD beta, like I said, there was autopilot and navigate on autopilot where the car could stay in its lane, and it would just sit there and keep its lane. Very good at that for years at that point. You get FSD beta on your car. So the day before you didn't have it, the next day your car can drive itself, through this free update. Well, you had to pay for FSD, of course. And you get on a straight road and the car's just ping-ponging in the lane, doing this back and forth. There's no turns, there's nothing. You're like, what? Yesterday you could go straight. I didn't have all this advanced software, and now you're doing this. They fixed that within a week. Back then, we were getting software updates like once a week, consistently. And they fixed that very quickly. But it was just kind of funny to have such a drawback of this basic feature. And then back in the day, the car has... now it's seven exterior cameras, 2 in the front, 4 on the sides, and then 1 in the back. And it wasn't even using all of those cameras in the beginning to do the full self-driving. And then it eventually turned on all the cameras over time. I don't have exact dates for you, but it can be found. This stuff's been recorded. And then it was only looking at kind of images, like a picture of the scene, and making a decision. Eventually, they added the ability for the car to kind of see in video, right? Over time, like you and I do when we're looking, we see a vehicle moving, we can kind of make estimates based off of, where it's going to be, what it's going to do. So, they added that ability. Things like left turns used to be really bad. And then like you couldn't do a left turn because the car, first of all, it would get into the position to do the left turn. It would turn the wheel all the way to the left, which is really dangerous because if somebody rear ends you, it will send you flying to the left into traffic, right? You're not supposed to turn the wheel until you're ready to actually make the move. Little things like that. All of these things have kind of come together. Another thing, when you're at a left turn light, it's green, but it's you have to wait your turn, right, to make the left.
It's not an arrow.
Yeah, exactly. It's just green, no arrow. The car would just sit at the line. It wouldn't move up and wait for its turn, right? It's a very human thing to do. And that's, I think legally what you're supposed to do. I'm not sure, some of these things are like what humans do, but legally you're not supposed to.
Right.
And it would just sit back there and it would just be terrible. It would never make it. It would miss multiple light cycles. Well, now the second the light turns green, it scoots up into the middle of the intersection. I mean, it feels like somebody is remotely controlling your car. It's very cool. So over the years, they've had big improvements. Another big thing that was a problem for a long time was phantom braking, where the car would be driving and it would hit the brakes for no reason. And some of these, they were never huge. It's not like you'd go from 50 to 0 or something miles per hour, but you'd maybe go from 50 miles per hour down to 45, and if someone's behind you, that's really weird. That used to be a big problem maybe a year and a half or so ago. Now it's, pretty much never happens. I should say in my experience, because there's always people listening that go, it happens to me all the time. Well, I can only talk about what I experience. But so there have been pretty big leaps in terms of what the car can do and how capable it is. And then I have one final thing, because the way you phrased that was really good in that, are there things they've tried that they've then taken away? So one of the big things is the older cars used to have a radar in the front. And at some point during all this beta testing, Tesla determined we don't need the radar. We're going to go vision only, and not worry about the ultrasonic sensors or anything. So newer cars don't even come with a radar anymore. They only have the cameras. And so that was a big change they made that I think initially was a little worse, but then ended up being, in my opinion, much better. So things like braking distance, how gradually it slows as it's approaching stopped cars is way improved now without the radar. And then, man, I mean, there's so many things. Another one is called the occupancy network. And it was Tesla's decision or Tesla's attempt to let the car see objects in the real world. So say you're driving down the road and you have a garbage can in the road, right? Does the car really need to know what it is? Does it have to know it's a garbage? It's not a good example because the cars actually do know what garbage cans are. Let's say you have a couch in the middle of the road, okay? Does the car need to know it's a couch? Not really. It just needs to know, I can't run into this thing. I have to drive around it, or I have to stop and wait for it to move, whatever it is. Well, Tesla introduced the occupancy network, which that's exactly what that is. It can detect 3D objects in space. It doesn't really matter what they are. And it can know how big they are, about where they are, if it can move around them, all of these different things. So that was huge in improving the car's capabilities, and I loved it. But now going to version 12, it's gone. They don't need the occupancy network anymore. They're kind of moving on from that. So it's pretty interesting how they've tried all these different things. They kind of reach a local maximum. They go, okay, this is the answer. And then they go, oh, okay, this actually isn't the answer. Now we need to change everything again. And that's what we're seeing with version 12 coming up.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting challenge that you mentioned. And totally, I think recognizing those objects, I mean, it just like lends to the intelligence of the system, because if it's maybe like a blanket that, like, you know, a towel in the road that you could run over versus a couch that you don't want to run into, it's a lot to be processing, and the confidence of it as well is something that I think is really interesting. So in terms of the confidence of the system, not the one that you have in it, but rather that the, you know, system is making decisions based on a certain confidence factor. How do you feel like that has shifted throughout time too? And that it can like trust itself. I mean, I'm anthropomorphizing it, but
no, man, are you sure you're not a beta tester? Because I don't know, the way you're phrasing these is amazing. So that's actually still to this day one of my biggest gripes is the car's confidence in how it moves throughout the world. So it used to be garbage, awful. You would get up to a right turn and the car, say a stop sign, the car would make its complete stop and then it would kind of start moving. You're like, there's nobody here. I don't see a car for I can see 5 miles in every direction. There's nobody here. Just go. And the car's like, you know, creeping and creeping and creeping. And then it'll finally, you know, barely move. Like it's so scared of its own shadow. That has improved so much over the years. And it is one of the things that still, I try to cut it some slack because like it's a robot driving around, right? So I'd much rather it err on the side of caution than just go flying out into an intersection. But sometimes it still needs more confidence, but that has improved tremendously, especially when you have actual other cars around. And it's so funny because I notice I do the same thing. So let's say you have a stream of cars coming, you're waiting to make a right turn. As soon as that last car starts to pass you, before they even fully pass you, FSD will start to, you know, move out just like a person does and then make the turn. If there's nobody around, you'll actually see a little bit more hesitancy because it doesn't have, it doesn't have like a positive control of like, oh, there's a car, I have to wait. It's like, is it actually clear or am I not seeing if there's a car? And personally, I'll do the same thing. If there's cars, you just stop and you kind of wait a minute. If there's no car, you look, and you're like, okay, there's really nobody. All right, I'm going to go. So it's pretty human-like in that regard. That's
really cool. And so it makes me think of the, the logic that is going into it because, maybe we should say, so this is how it's been progressing over time. There's been lots of different versions, as you said, like pretty often software updates, but it seems like they've tapered off a little bit. But now we're moving towards, this is FSD v12 update, which there's no beta in there too. So can you tell me why?
Because Elon said so. I mean, that's basically it. I wouldn't read too much into that. A lot of people were very excited. And I mean, you could kind of go crazy thinking of all kinds of things. Does no beta mean it's government approved for people to sleep in the back? Like, no, that's crazy. But I mean, you could go that far and think that's what he means. I think if it really comes without that beta label, which, let's be clear, if you look in the software menu of a Tesla, like everything is labeled beta, the autopilot, the seat heaters, I mean, everything you can find. I'm exaggerating a bit, but a lot of things are labeled beta. With FSD, if it's really not labeled beta, the main thing I think that would mean is that you don't have to like opt in to get it onto the car. Because as of now, I mean, even the opt-in is pretty much gone, but in the past, you had to opt in and then you had to get a safety score and you had to wait and blah, blah, blah. So my main thing was like, oh, okay, you just can buy FSD and turn it on. That's what no beta would mean. Okay. I wouldn't be surprised if when it first comes out, it's still labeled beta and then maybe they remove it later. I don't know. Besides literally Elon tweeting that one time, I'm not sure it really means much.
Okay, interesting. But we are referring to this new update that's now Tesla employees specifically have as this FSD version 12, V12 update. And I'd love for you to kind of enlighten me a little bit. So we talked about how the sensors came off the vehicle. So they're now relying on, is it solely cameras? What is the logic behind this that the car and the software is using to make the decisions that it does?
Yeah, it's cameras. It has camera input. And then, based on what it sees, it's going to make those decisions, which is pretty much how humans drive. And that's always been, Elon or Tesla's goal is look how the roads are designed. They're designed for you to use your eyes and look around, sometimes your ears, but for the most part, you look around and you see there's a red light, or you see this says no passing zone, or you see there's, an object in your way, and you make decisions based off that. So, the end goal of Tesla is to make this system have a brain. It has more eyes than we do, so it already can see more than we can all at the same time, which in my daily, life of using the system has benefited me already, because like when you're making an unprotected left and you got cars on both sides, you're doing this back and forth. You can't look at them all. The car can, and it saved me in multiple situations. Not that, maybe I wouldn't have gotten in an accident or something, but it doesn't go when I think we should go. And I'm kind of like, I guess I'm not going to push the pedal if the car's not going to move. And then I look and I'm like, oh my gosh, there is somebody there, but I didn't see them. So as of now, it's just using the cameras. There is, if you want, to get a little deeper into it, Tesla in the Model S and X, in the S and X, they do have high resolution radar in them. That this was in the Walter Isaacson book, and then Elon also commented on this on X. They have that radar in there, not for customer vehicles to use to make any decisions, but they're collecting data from those radars, bringing it internally, and comparing it to the decisions the car is making, what data the cameras are picking up, and saying like, all right, does this give us enough benefit? Does this add enough information for us to justify adding this to the vehicles? Because Elon is pretty much like hell-bent on vision. Like, humans don't have a radar. We don't need a radar. The other side of that is humans crash all the time. So maybe we want some more sensors that humans don't have. You know what I'm saying? Because maybe we want some more sensors so the cars are better than us. So, there's a whole argument there. And I'm not saying that I know better than the whole autopilot team does, but that's kind of my idea.
I mean, I think this is an interesting part of it too, because of course it's like, oh, cars that can drive themselves, convenience, but also safety. I mean, there's things on, my 2016 Outback that are safer than I can be. They let me know if there's an obstacle, if a car is moved, if I'm going out of the lanes, like all this stuff, because, we're not the most evolved, brilliant creatures, and cars can, like you say, use all these other tools to make that better. So I think that's a part of it too. It's obviously cool technology, but it could mean safer roads in general. And that's why also we're playing with this, of course, and opting in, like you say, with the beta version, folks are opting in. You have to choose to be a part of the experiment, basically. But also what you're saying too about taking that data back, I can only imagine, the car is making real-time decisions based on what it's seeing and how it's programmed to react to those, but also all the data that Tesla is taking on the back end and working with to create this next version, the next iteration, and everything. And so one thing I was reading is that I saw this in the Electric article about this that I'll reference in the description, but the main difference with the V12 update is expected to be vehicle controls being taken over by neural nets rather than being hard-coded by engineers. So neural nets, there's a brain. Is that what it's saying? And that's kind of what you're talking about? Yeah.
Pretty much. I mean, that's always been the idea that Elon has talked about, is that you can't code out of this problem. Now, I am not like a software coding guy, so this starts to get a little above my pay grade. But, you can think of it in this way, in that when certain companies try to make their self-driving cars, they write a line of code for this isn't exactly true, but we can just think of it this way. They write a line of code for every scenario you can encounter. So yeah, exactly. And if you're at a normal intersection and nothing's happening, that's pretty easy. Like, if green light, go; if red light, stop. Whatever. If pedestrian, don't hit them. Whatever. But driving is infinitely complex. You'll never be able to figure all that out. So Elon has said for a long time, even though they were hard coding stuff, that he thinks you need to get pretty close to artificial general intelligence, like the holy grail, to ever solve this problem. And people waffle back and forth on whether he knows what he's talking about, or he's really good at this. And I'm, I try to be really skeptical of everything, but I just keep leaning towards the fact that he really does seem to have this nailed down in terms of what you have to do. And if you look at one of the good examples of talking about software and hardware, the combination of all that, and where I could say I'm totally wrong in thinking we could use more sensors, is look at what's going on with Cruise right now. And they have LiDARs all over the place, and radars all over the place, and cameras all over the place. and they all got pulled off the road because, you know, they're too dangerous. And now all of this is being looked into, and it's like, whoa, they actually have way more human interventions than we ever thought they did. And I don't want to talk too much about it because it's, you know, going through courts and stuff. And so the truth will come out eventually, and I don't want to just, you know, act like I'm making stuff up. But just from what we've heard so far, it's come out in the articles, it looks like these cars with way more LiDAR and radar and more sensors than Teslas are doing a comparative job or even a worse job in terms of like interventions per mile. And it's like, then it must be the software. You can't just add, you can't keep adding hardware. They already have all the hardware all over the place. So V12, yes, we'll go to neural nets. And so Tesla said they're deleting like 300,000 lines of code. And some of the examples are, and they're going to have some big problems with this, but some of the examples. So when you come to a stop sign, do you make complete stops?
Well, yes.
Yeah, right.
Well, I mean, my mom would always yell at me about rolling stops. So you're supposed to stop fully, look both ways, then carry on. If you don't want a ticket too, if there's a car behind you. But I know most people, like, they slow down, they look, it's clear, they carry through.
Yeah, exactly. At 2-3 miles an hour.
Yeah.
And a lot of those people, you should get someone to like tell someone, hey, next time you're with me, don't remind me, but pay attention to my stops. Am I making complete stops? Because you probably don't. A lot of people think they're making complete stops, but they don't actually. They get down to like 1 or 2, 3 miles per hour and then they roll through.
You're probably right.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's what the Teslas were doing. They were rolling stop signs in very specific scenarios. So they had all these, again, this was all hard coded. They had all this logic of like, if there's no other vehicles or pedestrians, if the speed is below 35 miles per hour, if, you know, you can see clearly, whatever, go ahead and roll the stop sign. Well, NHTSA came and said, you can't roll stop signs. So now the cars make complete stops 100% stop signs, and it is the most miserable experience. Even though it's technically correct, it is awful. I've been honked at multiple times, literally for making a complete stop. I did nothing wrong. I followed the law to the, the car followed the law to the T, and the person behind me is honking because they're like, why aren't you going? There's nobody around, right? Yeah. So things like that are not going to be part of the car anymore. The car is going to learn, again, some similar to how you and I would learn. It's you're either instructed on a task or you watch someone else do a task, and then you learn how to do it. So as of now, if I'm understanding this correctly, Tesla is feeding in tons and tons of video into their version 12 AI system, whatever. And they said that they're selectively picking videos from good drivers. And they found one of the problems they had for, you know, making the system make complete stops is they had a hard time finding any video of people making complete stops. They said it was like 0.5% or less of people make complete stops at stop signs. And it's, I mean, this stuff's super nerdy, but it's really interesting. Like, go hang out at a stop sign if you got nothing to do and watch. You'll probably see almost, unless cars are interacting with each other, of course, you'll see almost nobody making a complete stop. They just don't.
They don't.
So anyway, to get back to the point, they're not hard coding things. They're basically, I don't know, have some magic AI thing. Right. And they're feeding it hours and like millions of hours of video, maybe billions of hours of video, I think, actually. And the car is then learning how to do the driving things.
Very
and
cool.
It does them. Yeah.
I mean, that's so crazy. I can only imagine like the AI that they're working with there. And again, yeah, like the perhaps millions of hours of video that they're using to build this. And so I've heard a bit of a sentiment that it's like, yeah, when I drive my Tesla, I'm training it. But in terms of the micro and macro scale, it's more macro, I'd say, right? Like they're taking all of these small data points from all these people, but they're putting it back on the back end and then building the software from there. So you're not, riddle me this, is someone training their car, or rather they're training the larger software that is implemented in the FSD large scale?
Right. Yeah. No, you're not training your individual car. Tesla is taking data back and then fine tuning all their models and then sending out a software update. There is some evidence that Tesla can tweak. I mean, they definitely can tweak some very, very minor things without a software update. So you'll like come back to your car and something's different. But the level to which they can do this in terms of like the FSD abilities is debated, and nobody knows, you know, what the facts are. But it definitely they can tweak very small things, but you know, like will your car fail a right turn, a specific right turn 10 times in a row, and then you go back the next day and it doesn't correctly 100%, 10 times in a row? I don't know if they can do that level of tweaking without a software update.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, makes sense. Okay. Super, super interesting. I just think that this is pretty crazy, and it'll be cool to see what happens in this V12. So employees only have it right now, but I know Elon, of course, has goals that by the end of every year, this year, that it'll finally be it. But where do we stand, do you think, in your experience living with FSD, where are we in its evolution?
I think it's so if you know what you're getting, I think it's a great system if you know exactly what you're getting, and then you can on your own evaluate kind of the price, if it's worth it, etc. I think it's very nice. I use it daily. I like it. And I appreciate it. It's hard for me to kind of so for the first time recently, I did suggest I think it is worth the 12 grand. That's really hard for me to say because 12 grand is like a crazy amount of money. And some people are going to think I'm a total idiot for saying that. And other people who really like it are like, heck yeah, it's worth 12 grand. Obviously. Mm-hmm. So I think it's at a point now that it wasn't a year or more ago that the right person with the right mindset who knows what they're getting into would be happy paying for it, or maybe monthly, the $200 a month. In terms of the overall goal of a robo-taxi my criteria is I can go to sleep in it on my way to work and it'll take me to work. That's when we're there. That's kind of my cutoff. Well, there's two, that or Tesla takes liability. If you're getting an accident, FSD is on, that's kind of the other kind of okay, obviously it's a self-driving car if Tesla's willing to take liability. I think we're far away from that. And it's hard to say without experiencing version 12, blah, blah, blah. But there's so many, I could go on about this for days. There's so many different things you need for all of this to come together to actually work correctly. So let's say the car it can drive 10 million miles between accidents, which would be 20 times better than a human. Okay. 20 million miles. You got to get the regulators on board. Sure, say they are. But you don't have a lot of redundancy in the car. So what if one of the cameras gets covered in the middle of a drive by, I don't know, snow, or a bird poops on the camera or something? The cameras don't have wipers on them. What if it gets foggy? Mm-hmm. Hopefully the car will be able to, pull over or something, which actually Elon did show in his V12 live stream. It does have some kind of pullover ability, which we don't have now, which is cool. Mm-hmm. It's just there's so many factors. The other thing is, okay, 20 million miles sounds like a lot, right? In between accidents. But if you have 1 million Teslas on the road and they're driving 20 miles a day, that's 20 million miles a day. That means you have a full self-driving Tesla accident every single day. Mm. Now, overall, it's less accidents than the general population. But all of those accidents are attributed to a single source, and that's Tesla. They can't. They can't, because people are going to be angry at Tesla. Mm-hmm. Even though Tesla prevented, 1,000 accidents that day. Those people don't care about that. They're like, hey, I was in an accident, you're in trouble. So it's just, the numbers are just crazy in terms of how far you need to go in between interventions and accidents and stuff. I'm skeptical, but we need to, get version 12 and experience it.
Right. And I think that's part of this too, is that Tesla is not done. Or anyone working with this technology is not done with it. And it seems to me like a really cool experience if you get to be a part of it, if you can afford it. One, of course, that's a high price point. Right. So $12,000, that's not nothing. But you do say it's worth it. And you said earlier that you were addicted to it. So what do you like about it so much?
I don't enjoy driving, so I've been driving for, I'm going to age myself, almost 20 years now. And just in Metro Detroit, in this area, there is no public transport, very little. It's a motor city. Everything's built around, everyone has a car and you drive everywhere, which is fine. It's nice to have the freedom, and I can hop in my car and do whatever I want. I don't have to wait for a bus or whatever, wait for a train, whatever. But my jobs that I've worked have always been very far from home. So my current job, I drive 70 miles a day. That's my commute. 35 miles there, 35 miles back. And it's pretty much, 25 miles of that is highway. So 50 miles a day of highway, 20 miles a day off highway. And it gets old. I don't want to do that every day. Geez, it's 40 to 60 minutes of my time daily. Actually, double that. That's one way, is 40 to 60 minutes. And like when I used to work in Detroit, I mean, that was so much worse. Driving in and out of Detroit every day was, oh my gosh, it took forever and I didn't go nearly as far. So it really takes the monotony out of driving for a few reasons. Number one, when it was older and it sucked, it was kind of sweet to be like, wow, I have this cutting edge technology that like I get to experience and I'm helping with, I think, you know, according to Tesla, I'm helping develop this, which will increase safety on the roads and help people who, you know, can't drive, you know, say somebody's blind and then they could call a self-driving car to pick them up, which they could do right now in San Francisco with, you know, Waymo. You know, contributing to all of that on top of like kind of the gamification of watching the car and like, oh, is it going to do something here? Like, oh, it messed it up or it did it right. Yeah. That's so cool. And when it is doing things correctly, it's so relaxing to just, you know, I can't read a book or text or anything, but I can just be like hanging out and watch the car. And like I said, I mean, I'll make it to work daily, most days, I should say, without doing anything. And it's just so much more relaxing than having to adjust the steering wheel constantly every day.
When the first time that happened, when you got in and it took you to where you were going without you having to intervene at all, what happened? How did that feel?
Oh, I was ecstatic. I mean, I celebrated it. I think I remember the exact drive because, so, you know, back in the day when it was really bad, I actually tried to do a drive and I told everybody up front, I was like, I am intentionally picking like the easiest drive right now so I can go A to B without doing anything. And it still screwed it up. It was literally like 2 turns. It was like, I think it was 4 miles and 2 right turns and that was it. And it couldn't make it. And I was so disappointed. I'm like, I tried to give you an easy drive and you still can't do it. Well, this first drive where I didn't do anything, if I'm thinking of the right one, it's actually decently complex. It was like in a downtown scenario and I had to go back and forth. I was picking up something from work. So I wasn't even like recording a video or, you know, intentionally trying to challenge it. It was a drive I had to do. And it just made it back and forth. And I, you know, of course I tweeted about it and all that, but it was very cool. And now it happens, you know, like I said, I don't know 50% of the time, but maybe 30 or 40% of the time it'll make it, you know, A to B without you doing anything.
That's pretty cool. I mean, that's a high percentage of the time when 100% of the time I'm driving my car, I'm driving it.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Well, and those other times it's the car. I mean, pretty much every drive, the car does 99% of it. Yeah. So.
How cool. I do really think this is cool, whether or not, you know, Tesla can be something that polarizes people in general for a lot of reasons. But this technology, I think, is super cool. And it has the ability to make driving more enjoyable for people. You know, if we do depend on cars and you're in traffic, like if you can just not have to be really a part of it, but also feel safe and confident in the vehicle's ability, I think that's super cool. So what changes do you want to see in V12 that really stand out?
I would like the car to drive me A to B and me not do anything.
Yep, that's the goal.
Yeah, exactly. It's hard because, you know, the system has been so refined up to this point. And I mean, don't get me wrong, I want to be clear. It still does make a lot of mistakes and it can do like things that are really stupid. They're like, how is this possible? Like sometimes it'll still, I don't know about run a red light, but I've had it where sometimes it'll stop at a red light and then try to go through it after stopping, like dumb stuff like that. So I'm not
it's a stop sign.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm not saying it's perfect by any stretch of the imagination, although I'm very impressed by it. The system has been so kind of rounded out in its abilities. It can do most things. It just needs to get better in general. So number one, it's more confidence most of the time. Moving through intersections and stuff like that. Number two, the thing that's really not working and Tesla's never really claimed that this was supported is pretty much anything parking lot related. So the car can navigate through parking lots, but it's usually like real goofy. So like you'll turn it on and it'll bump the speed up to 45 miles per hour. And you're like, whoa, we're in a parking lot. Yeah, what the heck? Or it'll be driving and then it'll just randomly turn left into one of the lanes. Like, what the heck? It can't, you know, auto park exists, but you basically have to like set it up and press the button. It can't reach a destination and then park itself. So we need like pretty much all the parking lot stuff to be done. But then, you know, I go back and forth because if you're talking robotaxi, it's probably just going to drop you off at the door and then
it's true.
You know, drive away or whatever it does. So we need a lot of that, you know, kind of rounded out. Yeah, it's hard to be really specific for me, but just in general, better driving and then you know, polishing some of the or adding some of the features we don't have.
It'll be cool to see like how much it has improved from, you know, being in version 11 point question mark to V12. dropping the beta. Is that really significant? Maybe not, but just to really see what happens. And of course, like you said, like throughout the progress, there has been, updates that have improvements, but also then something else is knocked down. So I wonder if we're going to see any fallbacks like that. Is anything that you've read point to any of that, or just like the history tells that could happen?
We don't know anything about version 12. There's no leaking. I think the employees that it went to, I think it's a very small group that have it. It's not, so there's like this general employee rollout that you'll get before it goes out to non-employees. It's not even at that stage yet. I think it just went to some of the QA people. That's just a guess. But so in the past, Elon's really his own worst enemy sometimes, because, if he hadn't said anything, let's just say, about FSD, obviously that's not his personality, but let's just say he never said anything about it and they just were sending out these software updates, people's minds would be blown. They'd be like, what is this? But when you have this guy, for 5 or 6 years saying, oh, by the end of the year, it's full self-driving level 5. And then it's not, you're like, oh man, well, he said it was going to be this, and now it's worse than what he said. So, it kind of disappoints people. In terms of the updates, so like I said, we used to get updates weekly. Now that we're waiting for version 12, of course, I wouldn't expect to really get updates until that comes. There was this time where the updates would go from like version 1 to version 2, and it was very quick, like, a couple weeks apart or something. So I remember very specifically, we go to version 5, and Elon tweets and he goes, oh, version 5 is coming soon. This one is mind-blowing. It's going to make the car so much better. And this was very early on. This was probably like early 2021. So the beta's out maybe 6 months at this point. And he goes, this is going to polish a lot of the problems you guys have. It'll blah, blah, blah. The update comes to our cars and like nothing changed. Like literally nothing was different. And all the testers were talking to each other and, posting our videos and stuff. And we're like, what is this guy talking about? Why did he say that? Like, why would he say that?
Blowing.
Exactly. Yeah. Why would he say that and set us up for disappointment? So then, version 9 comes out. Then we get to version 10, and then we get to version 10.69, which, Elon had to make to be funny. Right. And he said, this is the one, blah, blah, blah. We were all very desensitized at this point. We're like, whatever. That version actually was awesome. It was a huge improvement. It made things so much better. And I remember, in terms of confidence, one of my biggest complaints, this thing would fly through intersections, like in a good way, take turns all over the place. It was awesome. Then we get version 11, another big step up. Now version 11 has regressed some and brought some really like stupid things that I'm very annoyed with. But overall, we were seeing these big jumps again. So with that history, I should calm myself, but I'm a very optimistic person. I have high hopes for version 12. I really do, especially taking into consideration. Did you watch the live stream of version 12 with Elon?
No, I didn't.
Okay. You should check it out. It's a very impressive video. Okay. He basically says there's no hard coding. It takes a couple of roundabouts. It intersections. And he goes, we didn't code it and tell it when you get to a roundabout, you yield and then you move through. He goes, it just watched videos and now it knows how to do it. He said that it's learning to read signs because, cool. It puts all that together. It sees, when this sign appears, humans act this way. So that's what I got to do. Right. So I do have high hopes for version 12. That was a very impressive video, but I should probably calm myself.
I mean, I think it's easy to get excited about this when we see technology advancing like this. And for someone who uses it every day, like you do, if it's going to get better and better, your driving experience is going to get better and better.
Right.
So super cool. I really appreciate your expertise on this, because knowing about it is one thing, living with it every day and from the beginning is another. So I'm sure it's like super exciting to see how it's gone through it. And like you said, I mean, there have been ups and downs, and I think if the trends follow, that'll just keep happening. I mean, I don't know about any kind of software really that's quite perfect, and this is self-driving cars, so I feel like it's a huge feat. Yeah, but super, super cool. So I guess we'll see how this first batch of employees, they'll go through that, then it'll be launched to most employees, you said, and then the public.
Yeah, so they have these groups. So they have like the employees, and then there's like the OG testers. So like those 1,000 people I was talking about. So like I'm one of them, and then there's some other people, on Twitter and YouTube that you'll see that are part of that group. So usually they'll get it first, and then sometimes it's like weeks before anyone else gets it. Sometimes it's like the same day or the next day. But they could change everything at any point, so it's hard to say exactly what order it's going to release in.
Super cool. So, I mean, it's something to consider if you're getting a Tesla. I mean, if you're getting the tax incentives and then you could just add it back on with
there's
FSD,
there's no justifying it. It's a crazy amount of money. It's a crazy. The software is very cool. You know, I would say definitely try it. If you use a referral code, you get 3 months of full self-driving for free. So everyone can give it a try for free, or you can subscribe for $200 a month. In my opinion, definitely worth $200 to have it for a month just to kind of experience it. If you hate it, just, cancel it, obviously.
Don't get it.
But yeah, exactly. Just don't get it. But it's definitely worth experiencing. It's a trip. The videos don't do it justice. And then, for the right people, I think it does offer enough kind of like stress relief and driver assist stuff that you can justify it for the right person.
It's a peek into the future, I'd say. And folks can check out your channel. Do you have more videos about FSD that they can check out and your experience with it?
Yeah, my channel is full of FSD videos from the past 3 years. Good stuff, bad stuff. I mean, my goal is to show what's going on. Of course, I give my opinion and stuff, but then I put all the information out there and people can judge, what if they think it's bad or good. The same video will have half the comments saying that it was an awful, terrible drive, and then the other half of the comments are like, wow, that's the most impressive thing I've seen. So,
That's cool. Yeah, again, I appreciate your perspective about everything, and thank you for coming on. So are you going to the Cybertruck delivery event?
I will be there. Yes.
Nice. Okay. You'll have to say hi to Kyle. And Colton, I think, will be there too to check out, the details of the Cybertruck as it's revealed. You have that keen eye. So that'll be really fun. Is there, of course, people should follow along with you, but is there anything else that you want to share that you are working on lately that people should keep an eye on if they're interested in this kind of stuff?
No, just stick to my channels and you can learn a lot.
Yeah, I bet. I really appreciate your time. This was fun. I learned a lot, honestly, about FSD. I knew about it generally, but to hear about how it started, how it's going, where we think it will go is really interesting. So thanks for sharing your expertise with me, Chris.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.
Of course. And thanks everyone for tuning in. We will see you next time on the Out of Spec podcast.